the next hour to begin learning a little bit more about Taproot and then also about some wonderful social impact organizations that we work with. As people are kind of joining, as I mentioned, we're very excited to have this opportunity. So I hope you all feel the excitement in the room as people are trickling in. And I want to encourage people to take a moment to introduce yourself in the chat. We'd love to hear where you're joining us from. We always ask about professional skills. So if you want to share a professional skill you're really proud of, and maybe what interested you in joining us, we welcome you to share that introduction in the chat. And as you do so, I'll kick us off with my own introduction. So my name is Grace Litsu, and I'm the volunteer community manager here at Taproot. My role is designed to be a direct sort support to professionals looking to get involved by donating their time and expertise to organizations like the ones we have joining us today. So you've likely received a few emails from me, but if you haven't, welcome, and we're very excited to have you join our volunteer community. Um, you'll I'm your point of contact, so you'll receive emails from me going forward, and I'm here to support you in all things Taproot volunteering. So anything you need when it comes to getting started, to getting connected, I'm happy to be your support. And as part of this role, I've been able to grow in my connector skills. So in the spirit of sharing professional skills, that's the skill that I feel really proud of and proud to continue to grow in. Today, I'm also very grateful to be joined by some of my colleagues, Carissa and Kristen, who will be supporting with some Zoom logistics. So if you have questions, they'll be on board here. And if they feel comfortable, they can give a wave or also share an introduction. I just wanted to briefly point them out, so appreciate them being here. And with that, keep those introductions coming. I'll drop that in the chat of what we would love you to share. We love to have an active chat at our events here because it helps us tailor the event for you all and make sure that the event is what you need it to be. So feel free to drop those in and keep questions coming throughout. And with that, I'll go ahead and get us started. Okay, so um, I'll do a brief introduction. This is my background again, and I'll share these slides out at the end. So if you need to get in contact with me, you'll be able to access those. But that's just a little bit more about me. Again, feel free to drop your introductions in, and we'll keep moving forward here. So a little bit more about today's event. The goal of today's event is to spotlight some of the amazing work our social impact partners are doing to support their communities and to highlight the current opportunities they have open on the Taproot site, as well as how you can best support them and other organizations. Beyond getting to know more about our guest organizations and their missions, we hope you'll take this as an opportunity to become inspired by the power of collective action and the hope that comes from learning more and being empowered to take action. One of my favorite parts of working with volunteers is getting to experience that multiplier effect that occurs when volunteers get started doing work they love with organizations they care about. This encourages more action and brings even more people into our community to drive impact and support the communities we dearly love. So it's super exciting to see everyone here today, and to hopefully get you all connected with an organization or a couple more organizations that you're interested in. So this event is a learning opportunity and an invitation to volunteer through Taproot Plus on an ongoing basis. We won't cover information on our platform or technical support. And if you have those kinds of questions, I encourage you to reach out to the help desk or to follow up with me via email, and we can get you that kind of support. Our event will begin with a brief introduction into Taproot for those of you who are new to our organization, and then will be followed by a panel discussion with some of our wonderful nonprofit leaders doing amazing work. I'm really excited to be able to talk with them. I think you all will be really inspired by the work that they do. And then towards the end of our conversation, I'll invite our nonprofit leaders to share what areas they could use volunteer support in. And if there's time left over, we will open the floor for Q&A, but you can submit those questions throughout. Just a few logistical notes. We will be recording today's event and sharing the recording and follow-up resources after. We will also share a comprehensive list of the Taproot Plus opportunities that each of these organizations have posted, I invite you all to connect with them following today's call. Okay. With that, we'll go ahead and jump into our brief background about Taproot. I won't dive too much because I want to spend most of our time talking with our panelist. But as you may know, Taproot is a nonprofit ourselves, and we exist to support our fellow nonprofits. So Taproot was founded in 2001 with the knowledge that there's a massive resource gap present in the social sector. Organizations who may very well have the solutions to our world's most pressing challenges simply do not have the financial means or staff capacity to carry out their missions to the fullest extent. And so our purpose is to kind of offer this connection to access to resources for nonprofits, regardless of their mission area, budget size, or years that they've been in operation. So our goal is to get people the support that they need so that they can continue to do the work that they are best suited for, and that's serving their communities. So just briefly to touch on what skills-based volunteering is, and if you have questions of what this is, you can always ask me directly. But we use this term skills-based volunteering because it refers to a unique form of volunteering that is a donation of your abilities, talents, networks, and resources. And so it's a little bit different than quote unquote traditional volunteering because it involves utilizing your expertise and bringing that into the work that you do and donating that. So you might be more familiar with pro bono. That's another term that we use, and that is often common in the legal field or the medical space. But we believe that everyone has professional capacity that can be donated and shared. And we don't think we should stop at the legal field or the medical field. So we would love to encourage anyone with a background that they feel confident in to join our work and support organizations. Skills-based volunteering offers lots of benefits both to the nonprofit and to the volunteer. For nonprofits, working with skilled volunteers fills experience gaps and gives them more time and tools to do the things they're uniquely great at, such as serving their community and building their programming. Skills-based volunteering also builds lasting connections between volunteers and the nonprofits they support. So while it's not expected, it's common to see volunteers and nonprofits develop strong relationships that extend beyond the initial Taproot Plus engagement. And I'm sure our guest today will discuss that in a little bit more detail, but it's really one of the beautiful parts about skills-based volunteering. It also can't be understated just how impactful skills-based volunteering can be beyond sharing valuable expertise that contributes to the sustainable growth of an organization. Way beyond the partnership, it also has tangible financial value. So Taproot has been able to establish that the average hourly benefit of your donation of time and skills is about $220 and can go long beyond the support to help our organizations. And there's also benefits, obviously, to the volunteer and being able to cultivate and grow your skills as well. So these are just some things to keep in mind when it comes to what this form of volunteering is like. And I know many of you have already done this step, but also encourage you to, if you haven't done so, the best place to start is to create your account with us. So afterwards, if you're looking for help on how to do that, feel free to reach out. But this will walk you through a process of filling out your professional skills, areas you're interested in supporting, and get you well onto your journey to connect with organizations. And then lastly, I'll just point out kind of our volunteering by the numbers. Across Taproot Foundation, we've engaged over 40,000 volunteers in our programming, whether that's through our various opportunities through Taproot Plus and our advisory services program. These volunteers have collectively donated over 1.9 million hours of their time, which has delivered 320 million in impact. And so I think that I love to point to this just because I think it really shows the commitment to mobilizing passionate individuals and how much of a community that is created by doing this. And by you all being here, you're effectively part of that community. So we hope you feel welcomed and also excited to get started. Um, and with that, I'll get us going with our panel. So I'll do a kind of brief introduction of who we have today, and then we'll pull off the slides and just kind of have an open fireside chat between the three of us. And you'll notice there's three panelists listed today. I'll start with Lauren Kopsik, who's the founder and executive director of the Healthcare Navigation Project, was unable to join us, but I still wanted to introduce her and share a little bit about her organization. In case you are interested or see projects posted for her. The Healthcare Navigation Project is a nonprofit that's intentionally designed to disrupt the healthcare system and support people with their healthcare literacy and mental well-being. And they are in existence to bridge the gap in healthcare by empowering all people to learn how to use their healthcare and how to self-advocate within it. So Lauren has an amazing story and many opportunities posted on Taproot Plus. So if you get the opportunity to connect with her, I highly recommend it. And Kristen has dropped some of the links in the chat, and she'll do that throughout, including links for the websites of our organizations today, so you can follow up with them there. And then the two guests that we do have with us today are Sorella Bleeman Cohen, who is the founder and executive director of QNest, and Anyango Mpinga, who's the founder and executive director of Free as a Human Foundation. And so I'm excited to have them join us today, and we'll go ahead and get started with our conversation. So now that I've given that whirlwind of an introduction, I'd love to get started. And maybe we could start by sharing a little bit more about your mission and what your organization does. So maybe we could share the mission and the community you serve. Sorella, would you be okay if we start with you?
Certainly. Hi, everyone, and thank you, Grace, for inviting me to this panel. My nonprofit is called QNest, Queers Never Experiencing Shame and Trauma. I founded it a year ago after doing market research in Massachusetts and realizing that we don't have long-term solutions for homeless LGBTQ plus minors. I'm not going to dive into the entire market research. All I'm going to say is that I founded it. I'm a one person, and there's a lot to be done. Our mission is to create homes for homeless LGBTQ plus minors that have been rejected by their families or had to leave because of abuse and neglect. And as someone who is the only person running the organization, I'm definitely relying on Taproot for volunteers.
Yeah, thank you, Sorella. I appreciate you sharing more about your organization. And Kristen dropped the website to QNest in the chat for everyone to check out a little bit more. Anyango, would you be willing to share about your mission?
Sure. My name is Anyango Mpinga, and I'm a fashion designer. And that is how I started Free as a Human. I started it as a fashion campaign to advocate for the rights of survivors of human trafficking and modern slavery, um, especially highlighting how modern slavery has built the fashion industry, basically, whether it's in fast fashion, textile production, in the cotton farms. And the mission behind it, I'm originally from Kenya, and I wanted to highlight how human trafficking was so prevalent in Kenya and to sort of like help our society understand how practices that were normalized in our culture were really human trafficking. So that grew as a campaign, and I registered it as a nonprofit here in 2022. And it's been an interesting journey. So I'm very excited to work with some volunteers in just growing the nonprofit, um, because it's an area that I wasn't very familiar with, I have to say, because I'm an artist. I come from a fashion background. I had done consultancies with nonprofits before, but running your own nonprofit is a whole other ballgame. So and our mission is to support education and skills training for survivors of human trafficking. Because as we're engaging survivors through some of my partners on the ground, we realized that a lot of the women were asking to be trained and they were interested in fashion and in the arts. And so we're filling that gap.
Yeah, thank you, Anyango, for sharing. I think something that is really and exciting and inspiring from both of the missions that you've shared is uh, the organizations come out of a real need. Both of you expressed that you saw something, you experienced something, and it pushed you towards action with your organizations. And I think that's really beautiful to hear. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about that why. I think, Anyango, you placed it in a really wonderful way of seeing in your work as a fashion designer, seeing how the need has expanded and then growing that into your organization. But Sorella and you had shared your market research, but I'd love to hear what's one impact story that maybe captures the heart of your work right now, or what drives your team to do the work that you do. Um, which whoever wants to start can go ahead.
I'll jump in. So I've along the market research that I've done, I've come across a lot of really sad stories. But one of the stories that I heard recently was someone who stopped me at an event and said to me, "Your mission really resonates with me." As a teenager, when I was 15, I came out to my parents as being gay, and I was kicked out of the house. He said, "I traded sex for a place to sleep." He said, "If I was lucky, I would have a bed for a week." He said, "The thing that saved me was the fact that I went and got an education." But he said he lived on the streets until he went to college. So that's just one story that touches my heart, and there are many more. I also have to tell people that my son is gay, and I always loved him and accepted him, as did my spouse. And he's now an adult living in LA. So I think everyone deserves the love for who they are.
That's really beautiful. Thank you. Anyango?
I've come across a lot of inspiring stories, but I have to say that one of the people that inspires me the most in the work that we do, especially in advocating for for the rights of survivors of human trafficking, is one of the organizations on the ground that I work with in Kenya. One of the founders is actually a survivor of human trafficking, you know, and she's created this survivor-led organization. And just seeing how her story started and how she's become one of like the leading figures and, you know, just going around and advocating for the rights of trafficking, it just goes back to show how having access to education and information and having people believing in you can actually get you far, you know? And I think, yes, that applies in life in general, because whenever you have a powerful mission and you want to share it with people, you want people who believe in you to support you. Um, but for her, you know, this is a reality of something she's lived through, and the trauma doesn't necessarily go away. But the way she's used her voice to then create an organization which supports women like her, she's coming from an informed perspective. And I really admire that, you know. And I've also really admired seeing how some of the women she's worked with have transformed, because we have a partnership, so we work hand in hand. And how some of the survivors have actually taken up leadership roles within the organization. I feel like it doesn't get any better than that, because we talk about empowerment a lot, but seeing it in practice and actually seeing how um, economic empowerment comes through when women are given an opportunity, is very inspiring. So.
Yeah, yeah. And both of those stories definitely pull on the heartstrings. And I think the one of the through lines between both of them is kind of the other side, right? People have an experience, and with support and also kind of some systemic change, then we can have people go beyond that and be able to share and grow. And I think it's really powerful to share these stories, also because as a volunteer, it buys you, gets you excited and buys you into the work and the people that you're working with. Like this is what my work helps grow. And I think that's really important. And I'm curious, I know both of your organizations are relatively new and still kind of in that grassroots phase of growing. But have you seen the needs of your community um, change and evolve over the couple um, years or in the starting phases of your organization?
Definitely with the change in administration, we see a lot more need in supporting the LGBTQ plus community. Absolutely.
I think it really has evolved because as much as, for our organization, as much as our main focus is on education, we also see what's happening around the world, the wars have created more victims of trafficking. Every other day there's primarily women and children being rescued from trafficking, you know, and especially women from sub-Saharan Africa, you know. A lot of them are going to Arab countries to work, and anytime there's a war that breaks out, or anytime there's a little bit of instability, they're the first ones to be put out in the street. And unfortunately, our governments don't do very much to support them. In fact, there was an article that came out recently about how some of our government officials in Kenya own agencies that recruit workers who are then taken overseas to be used as domestic workers. So they're not really going to, you know, mess up where they're making their money. They're not going to. And so the system that we rely on to protect our women are the ones that are perpetuating the problems. So yeah, and it continues to increase. So it is a big challenge. And of course, with everything that's happening right now, it's a lot harder to fundraise because we're in our fundraising.
Right.
Uh, uh, we're fundraising right now actively. And so, yeah, so it's important to highlight that, yeah.
Have either of you found like hesitancy or increased hesitancy to support your organizations as part of some of these changes that you're talking about?
I wouldn't say hesitancy. I would just say that people are a bit more conscious of how they're spending their money and where they're spending it. Because again, you have to understand the people who are going to support, DEI initiatives and haven't changed their stance, those are the people you want to attract. However, if they have any impact on cuts to their budgets, then it impacts how much money they can actually put towards your organization, right? Because some of them are also dependent on external funding. So it's a bit of a balance, right now. I can definitely say yes, there's an impact. However, I want to be optimistic enough to say that there's always going to be people who will, root for you, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully the turnout of today kind of it shows that there's at least some people in your corner and who want to support. Sorella, have you seen any increased hesitancy? I know you mentioned um, an increase of need for support based on administration change, but I'm curious what your experience has been there.
I want to second what Anyango said, but I think the challenge is that there are so many good causes out there and so many nonprofits. and you can't donate to everyone. So people have to focus on what is near and dear to their heart. So I'm hoping that, like everyone else, that I find enough people that the cause is near and dear to their heart and they would be willing to donate to my cause.
Absolutely. And for the people listening, right, like these are two very strong organizations with very strong missions that tend to like they're kind of overlapping, right? People experience who have experienced human trafficking around the world or domestically, and then individuals who have experienced discrimination and lack of resource support because of their identity and who they love. And so these are two cause areas that hopefully this is mission discussion has given some insight into what our organizations serve and the missions that they have. I also would love to talk. We started talking a little bit about challenges and capacity, but thinking about volunteer skills and how people could kind of plug into the work that you do. What's a challenge your organization faces that maybe you wish more people understood?
Fundraising.
Likewise,
I mean, I feel like every organization is always fundraising, but I think when you get to a certain level, it becomes easier. But honestly, fundraising, it's one of those things that I'm just like, I'm ready for someone to just come and take over the fundraising aspect of my organization so I can focus on other things because, I'm obviously, I have to take the initiative and I'm organizing a few activities to fundraise, and one of them is an art exhibition that's coming up in July with the local museum. But within that, I'm still fundraising, even to like make that happen in the way that it should. So that's one aspect I would just much rather be like, hey, do you have a track record in fundraising? Come find me. Um, that's one of the big ones. And then also like remember I'm from Kenya. So understanding also like just the filing systems for me here is something that I'm still taking. It's something that I'm still learning and understanding. So yeah. So there's a few things, but yeah, fundraising is the main one.
I will second that again because fundraising is, I think, the issue for any nonprofit. So getting help, and as I mentioned, I'm a one person and I have to do everything. And if I could get help with fundraising, if I could get help with marketing, getting the word out, because one of the challenges as being a new organization is that people don't know you. Some of the large organizations that are well established, people just know, for example, in our case, the Trevor Project. Everyone knows about the Trevor Project. There are other organizations that are associated with LGBTQ plus. People know of them, and so they automatically want to donate to them. But then when there's someone new that hasn't done much as of yet, uh, they question, well, will you be viable? It's just like a startup. Will you be viable in a few years? And the answer is yes, I want to be there, but I need your support.
Yeah, I think that's really important for volunteers to hear because they might not have direct experience with fundraising per se, but there's skills within fundraising and like building that infrastructure that I'm sure people on the line or other volunteers have. Things like you said, Sorella, marketing, making sure that people even know that you're out there and you're supporting a cause. And I think and correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the benefits, at least in my mind, of smaller organizations is that they're able to be very in touch with the people that they work with. And so programs that Onyango Sorella create are directly built around the people that they've heard and the stories that they shared at the beginning. And so while there might be some concerns about viability, right? Like your ability to shift and support the people that are in your community is you're in a position to be a little bit more agile when it comes to that. And I think
Right.
that's really wonderful. But yeah, so fundraising, everyone, if there's anything you can do to help, excuse me, build fundraising capacity or I think one of the big things is being able to build some of the infrastructure to help make some of those things a little bit easier. So things around getting um, PR, if you're someone who does PR or has public relations, helping people build the strategy to implement that in the future. Reading copy, helping create people, the like messaging can be really helpful as well. But I would love to hear. I think this kind of goes on the back of that question, but more specifically, um, do you feel that there are or small teams, right? The lack of time, staff, or expertise limits the ability to grow your impact. Do you feel that way?
It certainly does because I have to balance two things at the same time. I have to balance the fact that I'm a creative and pour into that, and then pour into that business, um, and you know, do that as to my best of my to the best of my ability, and then also grow a small nonprofit that's growing, and also kind of try to manage that. So I feel like if I had an extra hand, it would make things much easier, even you know, alongside the things that you mentioned, another thing is also like posting regularly on social media. That's something that that as much as like we're all on social media, like it just sometimes it occurs to me, oh, I haven't posted in a few weeks now. Maybe I should talk to my audience. Um, and that kind of engagement is important, So I think there's certain things that if I had assistance, I would probably be doing a lot more, because I prefer to delegate than try to do everything myself. If anything, I'd rather not. So,
A-
yeah.
And I find there are two challenges that I have. One is obviously time, because you don't have time to do everything. The other one is I have some skills, but I don't have all the skills. So, for example, I have a website that was built, but there are certain things I can't do. I know a little bit, but not enough. So, I definitely need help with someone who knows more about websites. So, those are the two things, time and skills.
Yeah, and I think that that makes a lot of sense, right? Like you shouldn't, small nonprofits often wear lots of hats, but that doesn't mean that that's where your expertise or your heart or your time needs to lie all the time. And so getting support when it comes to some of those areas, even if you can build me a social media content calendar for the next 3 weeks, and then it's a little bit easier to implement rather than having to come up with that collateral and implement it on your own or having even just another set of eyes. I think there's a benefit to just being able to talk to someone to fill the what are you not seeing, and have them be able to provide that. At least I feel like sometimes we're so into the work that we do that it's hard to take a step back and think about maybe there's another way to do it or another way that we could support that. Um,
And
and
another one that I wanted to point out was accounting as well. If anyone's a good accountant here, give me a
and
shout.
that's like
Especially someone who's very familiar with like nonprofit work. Because like this is the thing with volunteering. Like so I've had volunteers from a law firm and they really helped me understand like the filings at the beginning, but like to continue in that process, it's you need someone who's like consistently like just helping you stay on top of things in the right way. Um and so yeah.
in accounting, I'm sure that's a universal challenge as well, kind of
Yeah.
with fundraising. But that's a great segue, Nyango, because I would love I know both of you have worked with skills-based volunteers before, and I'd love to hear a little bit more about what that experience was like for you. But yeah, we'll start there. What was that experience like for you?
So I worked with a lady called Marguerite Moore. And so initially I kind of just wanted a website audit. Because when I did the website, which is what's currently live right now, I did it myself. So I wanted someone to come and do an audit and sort of like maybe help with like a bit of copywriting. And she did a great job. And so she kind of just broke down like things that I needed to add onto my website. And so that was a very positive experience because she went above and beyond. And so now following that, I would like to now get someone else because we just finished the project a week ago. And so I'm looking to get someone else to now come in and help me implement those changes onto the website because I just don't have the time to do it. I did it the first time when I needed to set it up, and get it off and running, but I just don't have the time and maybe even the skill sets to kind of like do it better and make it more accessible to people because I really like to have a website that's accessible to like different people. And one of the suggestions that she made was to make it more to change the accessibility settings onto the website. And so yeah, but overall, it's been a really great experience working with her. Um, there were things that I hadn't even thought of that she brought up. So that was really good.
In
Awesome.
my case, I had someone point out that there are accessibility issues with the website. So I posted on Taproot, and one of the volunteers, Brenda Yee, reached out to me and said, I'm a UX designer, but I would love to help you with accessibility. That's something that is very important to me. And we talked a little bit. She was amazing, and she jumped right in, started making changes, suggesting things, and we're still working together. We're now working with another volunteer who is my web designer, and she suggested other things. She went way beyond what I expected. We were just looking at accessibility, but then the fact that she's a UX designer and she pointed certain things out and she made mock-ups, and I was just amazed at the work she's done. And I just wanted to give a shout out because she's looking for a job. So in case anyone needs an amazing UX designer and an amazing accessibility person, she's definitely that person. And thank you to Taproot because I wouldn't have had this help if I wouldn't have posted on the website asking for this.
Well, that's so wonderful to hear, and hopefully that gives people some insight into what working with the nonprofit could look like. And I know we'll talk about your projects and so what working with you might look like. But Onyango, I wanted to go back to what you talked about when you worked on an audit and you're able to now post another project to kind of continue that work forward. And I know, Sorella, you're considering doing the same thing. I think that's something else that is really helpful to think about in terms of volunteering. Is you might create a deliverable, and then that's something that the nonprofit can then go and take on and enlist more support for. So that's kind of the I talked at the top about the multiplier effect, right? Like these are things that we can get started that continue to help build a sustainable infrastructure for organizations. And thank you both for sharing those experiences. I know that volunteering is wonderful on the volunteer side, but it requires some project management and time on your side. So I'd love to hear from you two about what makes a strong partnership. What are some things for volunteers to consider to make make this a successful opportunity and make it easier for you on your side.
I
So
think it's important first of all, it all starts with me. So I have to be very clear about what I want. So I could give guidance on what I want, and that kind of makes it more successful. And with my interaction with Marguerite, for instance, like I gave her a brief and I said, this is exactly what I need. She came back with suggestions. I was able to assess those suggestions and say, let's keep this, let's add what you said, but this particular thing won't work because I know this audience and, you know, I know this particular thing wouldn't work very well, but I like this, let's keep that. The importance of that is to make sure that while you're working with a volunteer, you're also not losing your voice in the process, right? Because sometimes nobody knows your mission much more than you, right? And that mission can grow and evolve. So it's super important to kind of like be clear on what you want and communicate that, because it helps the volunteer also kind of like know how to support your needs, you know. Um, And yeah, so I found that that clarity and clear, just communication is such an important thing. And then knowing fully well, like where you are with your organization. Like if you don't want to pursue something in a particular direction, it's also okay to be clear about that, because your volunteer might be coming from a perspective, they're coming from a different perspective and background. So they might think, oh, maybe this is a good idea, but if you assess it and you don't think it necessarily works for your organization, then it's okay to say, maybe let's revisit this at a later date.
In our particular case, what we've done is we got together and we had an introduction call where we both set our expectations. Brenda told me what she knows, what she's good at, what she has done in her past. I told her what I was expecting, and we decided to just give it a shot and start working on it. She was upfront that she did not have experience with WordPress. I did not have experience in accessibility, so we talked about it and we just had regular meetings on a weekly basis. And we communicated also via email. And she would suggest things and I would weigh them. And just like Anyango said, certain things made a lot of sense and others we agreed not to do. And what I also liked is that there was a lot of respect on her side. If I decided that this is not something that we needed or wanted, she respected that. She didn't try to push her point of view. So I think that also speaks to her character. But yes, it was, as I said, a very good way to get the website to the stage it's at right now.
Yeah, and if I'm hearing correctly, the thing that can be most beneficial is kind of setting up that open line of communication. So if the asking clarifying questions, setting up your expectations around how often you're going to meet, and what kind of feedback you're looking for when you do that, I think that can be really helpful. And Sorla, to your point, like meeting once a week worked for you and the volunteer you worked with. But that's up to the individual relationship. I think that's important to set up upfront. And then Anyango, you mentioned clarity. I think I would empower any volunteer on the call to work to with in tandem with the nonprofit to get to that point of clarity. There's obviously on Taproot, there's opportunities that are they have the description in them, and that has a good starting point for a scope, but I think it's important to consider that that might change in that introduction call. And just as an insight into the Taproot process, that introduction call is a required part of our project process. So before you start working on a longer term basis, we ask that you have a call to talk about things like this, set up your expectations, and make sure that those are clear. But at the end of that call, there's still a possibility that they'll change, and the needs might change. So just some things to keep in mind on the partnership side. Um,
I can add one thing that initially, before I worked with Brenda, another volunteer approached me and we had an introduction call and we realized that this was not the right match. So we just did not cooperate together.
and I think that's really important too. Like it might not be the best fit, and it's better to have that shared kind of upfront than get started and realize that it's not a partnership that will work for you. I think that's really important to call out, Sorella. So I appreciate that. Um, and you've both kind of shared some experiences that you've had, but maybe we can talk about just generally. I know you both have opportunities on the site and shared some of what your needs are, but how else can volunteers support your work?
I think it's just, we need our community to know about our work and share it with people, you know. And so that's part of being, an advocate really is if you see a mission and someone who's looking for somewhere to donate, send them to an organization that you've come across. That's how people build community. And and of course, like, if you have a skill that you feel like will be really, really useful, I welcome people to communicate. Just be clear. Don't come to me and say, I want to volunteer, but you don't know in what way you want to support my organization, because I'll kind of be like, okay, well, I don't know what you can do. And I don't know where to place you. Um, So yeah, I think our community, first of all, is just, if you find that the mission feels aligned with your vision and who you are, share it. If you think you would make a great volunteer in certain areas, perhaps you've worked with other organizations that are similar to mine, um, I would very much welcome a conversation with you just to see what we can actually do because I have more needs than what is posted, right, online. I usually go with like, what do I need in the immediately. But I'm definitely going to be updating a few more areas where I'm looking for volunteers. And so, yeah, just reach out and let's have a conversation.
And I feel that spreading the word and creating awareness is very important. So if you're volunteering for me, put it on your LinkedIn, put it on your resume, because then
Right.
people see QNES and then they say, oh, that's interesting. Who is QNES? Let's go and check them out. So I think that works both ways, also for the volunteers to showcase their skills and for my organization by them spreading the word. And then also when you talk with people and you're telling them that you're doing this work for this organization, again, people will ask questions. So tell them about our mission, tell them what we do, tell them why you decided to work with us. What was it that caught your attention and made you reach out to us?
Couldn't have said it better myself, Sorella. I think that's really the spirit of that mutual relationship, and I think that's what's really beautiful about this kind of volunteering is there's a benefit not only to the organization, but you learn more about social issues by participating in this. You can become an advocate by participating in this, and then you can also build your skills and share it in that way too. So there's really, in my mind, no downside, but I'm
Right.
obviously a little biased. Um, and I wanted to kind of close with just maybe a short sentence of what advice you would give a volunteer who's never worked with a nonprofit before but wants to contribute meaningfully.
Do your background work on the organization and, just learn about them. And then when you approach them, just share what your skills are and your background. And don't be modest about your skill set. There's no time for modesty. Like literally just be bold and say, I'm very good at this and I know I can help you do this. Just be bold and go for it. There's no time for modesty.
We have some people who have done so in the chat, so I'll make sure to follow up with them and connect them. We'll make sure in the follow-up that you can connect with Anyango and Sorella as well. So if you're feeling like you want to jump in, like Anyango said, we'll make sure that's possible too. And Sorella, what is your words of advice?
Be upfront. I think what helped me was in the first case when I spoke with the first volunteer that we realized that there wasn't that the skills she had did not align with what I needed versus Brenda when she came and she said, I've done this, this, and that. However, in my particular case, she said, I have not done WordPress, but I'm willing to jump in and try my hand at it. And because there wasn't a lot of a risk of breaking anything, it was a good mutual experience for the two of us.
Yeah, I love that. Being upfront goes into that theme of communication. And I know that Anyango, you said a website audit, or sorry, continuing on the website audit, an implementation project posted, and then
Yeah,
Sarah, you have an audit project posted, as well as I think kind of a case for support development, which is a little bit more of a
Right.
marketing project posted. But as they both mentioned, if you have skills that you want to share, there's always opportunities on Taproot Plus that are for those skills, and then also the opportunity to reach out directly and keep us in the loop, right? Like I always want to know when you've connected with a nonprofit, and so we're happy to have those stories and connections as well. Um, but I know we're kind of getting closer to the end, and I wanted to open the floor for questions. If you have questions about Free as a Human Foundation or QNest or just volunteering more generally, we'd love to hear those questions. And feel free It looks like we have someone who has their hand raised. That's an option. You can also drop it in the chat. Andrea.
Hi, thank you for having this event. I'm Andrea. Um, so regarding Taproot, do you ever have panels like this with volunteers so that we could hear the experiences of volunteers?
Yeah, that's a great question, Andrea. I appreciate you asking. We do, and I think there's one that we have currently posted we did in February that is the nonprofit side and the volunteer side. So that's panel that we have in our and Kristen, if you're able to drop the link to the recordings that we have on our website, that would be great. But under I think it's resources. There's an option to go back through our pre-recorded events. And at the end of this event, this one will live there as well. But there's definitely panels, we'll have them in the future, and we've had them in the past of volunteers to offer their expertise.
Thank you. I would really welcome that, especially a live session where I could ask questions.
Of
Um,
course.
and then another question I had was, do you have I was looking on your website, I just created a profile. Is there a way to uh, search by geographic area? I wanted to find local opportunities.
That's also a great question. Not at this time. That's something
Hmm.
that we're building into our infrastructure and are hoping to introduce in the next couple of months. The best way to do, there's kind of two options to do geographic. So just as more context for others, a lot of the nonprofits we work for or work with are relatively small, like Sorella and Anyongo. So we um, have them as remote opportunities so anyone can kind of connect, and that's worked really well for us. But I also recognize that people want to support nonprofits in their own communities, and so that's why we're building that in. You can always keyword search, and that should bring some up, or I can do some work if you want to send me an email, and I can find some areas for you. Anyango and Sorella, I realized we didn't talk about where you're located. And so maybe that would be
Oh, yeah.
good to add. So if people are looking for those areas, they know that they can connect with you.
So I'm in
Um,
Massachusetts, and I also wanted to suggest for people like Andrea, there are local newsletters that connect people that are in nonprofits. So, for example, in Massachusetts, there's a Massachusetts Nonprofit Network, and they have a list of jobs and volunteer jobs. So I don't know where you're based, but that's just one example. We have another one called TSNE, Third Sector New England, again, as a way to find opportunities. And then there's another one, more for jobs, idealist.org. Then you may be able to find based on location there. But those are examples for Massachusetts that I'm aware of, but I'm not sure about other states.
my organization is based in New York. So, yeah, I split my time between New York and Nairobi, which is my home country. And Kenya is primarily where our programs are run, but the organization itself is based here. So I'm in New York at the moment.
And I see one other question that was related to volunteer service being in person. And hopefully I kind of answered that in that past question. But most of our volunteer opportunities are remote. And if they're not, it will be designated as so in the opportunity directly on the website. And Andrea, Kristen was able to drop that previous panel in the chat, so that's available for you as well. Do we have any other questions? Any questions about the organization or the work that people do?
So I have a question about, well, thank you all for your time today. Super helpful, really inspiring. What is the kind of average time frame time frame for a project that would be posted through Taproot? Were you talking like weeks, months? Do you all have a guideline around that? Just kind of curious to see what the time commitment is looking like.
Yeah, and that's a great question as well. I'll share the Taproot official answer, and then I'll invite Anyango and Sorella to share what that commitment looked like in their experiences. So our kind of official guidance is that projects are they're meant to be between 2 and 12 weeks. So not long term, but definitely can extend beyond a month. And we don't expect that you would need more than 3 to 5 hours a week, and that's kind of our on the side of more time than I think most people end up committing. It ultimately depends on what you decide with the nonprofit, but that's kind of our official guidance. Anyango, Sorella?
Yeah, I think that is
Um,
correct because we spend an hour talking every week, so that ties into your the amount of time you're putting in. But then it's dependent on what we're trying to achieve, and I think we discussed this initially, and then there was so much interest on Brenda's side that she decided to take on more. So I think it's between the volunteer and the nonprofit to decide what makes sense. And if this is too much of a time commitment, as a volunteer, you should also tell the person on the nonprofit side so that, again, I always think about setting expectations up front.
I think we took about 6 to 8 weeks for my project, and there were weeks where we had weekly video calls, and then there were some where it was bi-weekly. So, yeah, I think a total would be around 6 to 8 weeks.
And Taproot encourages our nonprofits to post projects that are within that time frame, and we have guidance around Taproot is not formatted to be a long-term engagement. They're meant to be more on the shorter side, but that's always something that we can help support if you have questions or need to help having that conversation with the nonprofit. We can help with that. Namrata?
Yeah, hi. I've been with Taproot for years, I think almost around the time when 2000, somewhere in middle of 2000 when it was formed. During the earlier days, we used to have these meetings where the volunteers and the sponsors and the board, we used to get together in downtown Chicago. And so is that something? And then it stopped, I guess, because of COVID and everything became more virtual. And so is that something that Taproot is looking for? Because then it'll tie to the volunteer opportunities in the local areas also.
So Namrata, so glad you've continued with Taproot and continued to work with us. What you're describing is a model that we used to use, and we've kind of moved away from that to be more accessible to lots of different kinds of organizations. So that's no longer the process. We sometimes will have events that are scope-a-thons or like longer day events, and those are kind of one-offs as our grant maker partners kind of fund those. And if as those come up, those are on our there's applications for them on usually on our events page, and there's outreach for that. So we don't use that model anymore. But if they do pop up, they you can see them on the events page. So hopefully that kind of answers that question. And so I'm gonna pause there to just wrap us up and share next steps. But I'll stay on the line after the top of the hour in case people have more questions or want some more one-on-one time. But I'll save everyone else from that. So just to wrap it up, I'd really love to express my personal gratitude for Anyango and Sorella joining us today. They're two wonderful nonprofit leaders who are very dedicated to the work that they do. So it was my privilege and pleasure to have them join us today and hopefully get to share a little bit more about their cause areas and the work that they do with you all. So thank you, Anyango and Sorella. In terms of next steps, we will share out all of the opportunities that all three of, including Lauren, our panel speakers today have posted. I also encourage you to filter through the opportunities and apply to any that you see fit. We also offer a volunteer office hour once a month, and that's the last Wednesday of every month. So if you have more technical questions, that's a great place for that, and I'll share that in the follow-up. And then I'll just drop in my email into the chat so that if people have questions for me, they can join. Sorry, they can send me that there. I'm not good at multitasking. Okay, there is that. But thank you all so much for joining us today. I really appreciate you setting aside that time, um, and listening to our nonprofits. I hope you all
Thanks
enjoy
for
the rest of
having
your
us.
day.
Thank you.
Bye.